Do you want to learn to quilt? Are you looking for suggestions for the tools you need to get started? In this video, I will share my favorite rulers and give you some tips on cutting fabric. Let's get started.
I'm Andy, and this is True Blue Quilts, a place to enjoy, experiment, and excel as you quilt. Most people know that quilts are made from fabric and thread, so you probably guessed that you need a sewing machine to start your quilting journey. You can certainly make a quilt by cutting fabric with kitchen scissors and measuring with a yardstick, but the task is easier and more enjoyable when you have the right tools. Start with the ruler. Your local quilt shop may have a large wall with 50 or more rulers of all shapes and sizes, but you only need one, maybe two if you can afford it. The very first ruler you should buy is a long one. The standard is 24 inches, but the width doesn't really matter. I started with 6.5 inches, so that is what I am most comfortable with. It is important to have a ruler that is longer than your fabric, and you will be cutting your quilt pieces from yardage off the bolt or fat quarters that are 18 to 20 inches long. Once I have my fabric cut into strips, then I reach for my small square ruler to cut the exact pieces I need for my quilt. It is possible to cut everything with a longer ruler, but cutting smaller pieces is easier with a smaller ruler. After you finish your first quilt and are ready to go all in with this new hobby, then you can expand your ruler inventory. Here are two important tips for beginners when you start cutting fabric. Make sure you are measuring with the markings on the ruler, not the lines that are printed on your cutting mat. Cutting mats can get warped and distorted, and that will affect your measurements. Also, keep the grid lines that are printed on the ruler right on top of the edge of your fabric, and this will help you make sure that your pieces are accurate and that you have enough room to get the full size piece you need while accounting for the width of the thread as you sew your pieces together.
Here is a demo of the cutting process. The first thing you need to do is square up your fabric from where you got the cut at the fabric store. So in this instance, I want to line up the fold with one of the horizontal lines on my mat. And I want to make sure that I am catching both layers of fabric. So I'm just going to use this vertical line on my mat to line up my ruler and cut that edge so I have a nice fresh straight edge that has a square corner. Then I'm going to reverse that and line it up again with another vertical line and make sure the fold is on a horizontal line. As I said, we want to use the markings on our ruler to measure and not the grid lines on our mat. So I'm going to make sure that one of the horizontal markings on my ruler is along the bottom edge, and a vertical marking, the measurement that I want, is right on the edge of the fabric. And find my rotary cutter and keeping that marking at the top and the bottom. I like to place my hand flat on the ruler. My pinky is acting as a guard to hold that securely. I'm going to cut until I just move past my fingertips. Then I'm going to reposition my hand, make sure that ruler hasn't shifted, I haven't moved my blade, and then I can finish the cut and I have the strip of fabric that I need. Now I'm ready to subcut my fabric. So I'm going to line up those selvage edges. We always want to trim off the selvages. So for this, I just need a perpendicular, so I keep that horizontal mark, and I trim about 1/2 inch away from that selvage, and then those scraps get discarded. Again, I rotate my fabric, so I'm starting with that straight edge. Now, I'm not paying attention to the marks on my cutting mat. I need to make a 4.5-inch square, so I find those measurements on my ruler, and it doesn't matter what's going on the mat. I've got my square on my ruler lined up with my fabric, and I can cut those fabric squares.
You can cut your own fabric or buy pre-cut charm squares. Either way, I have some suggestions for a patchwork quilt layout. Click on the video below to see my ideas. I'd love to have you in the True Blue Quilts community. Hit that subscribe button and I will share more quilting tips each week. See you in the next video.